Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me without a microphone? Do I need a microphone?
No.
Good, thanks. My name is Lisa Croucher. I'm the Executive Director of the Triangle Research Libraries Network. And I'm here today with Luke Swindler from UNC Chapel Hill, where he is Collections Management Officer, and Rebecca Sager of Oxford University Press, who's Senior Director of Institutional Sales for the Americas. This is Luke.
In case you were confused.
And I also want to recognize Jennifer Maloney, who has been really an active participant in this presentation, even though she's not up here presenting. She pulled together the notes and the slides and worked closely with the three of us on pulling this together. So I'm going to start by giving you the consortial perspective of this program. I'll tell you first briefly about the Triangle Research Libraries Network. We are a small consortium in number of members. There are 4 members, but we're a large consortium in the size of our collective collections. So we're Duke University, which is a private research institution in Durham, North Carolina. North Carolina Central University, which is a state HBCU institution in Durham, North Carolina. North Carolina State University is a public institution in Raleigh, and then UNC Chapel Hill is a public institution in Chapel Hill. For those of you who don't know what any of these places are, the most important thing to know is that these 4 institutions are all within about a 20-mile radius of each other. So that is a key factor in the project, the presentation that we're doing. That's the important thing to know. Some of you may have heard about this project, this program before, so what we're doing today is giving kind of a 5-year or 6-year, depending on when we start counting, update of the program. So the backdrop for this program was a Mellon-funded summit held in Chapel Hill in 2011 called the Beyond Print Summit. We invited 10 representatives from libraries and consortia and 10 representatives from publishers and academic presses to help us think about how to do ebooks better, ebooks in print. And this was back in 2011, so we were all sort of at the frontier of the potential of ebooks and what it meant. Sometimes it's hard to think back not that long ago, but everybody was excited and curious about finding mutually sustainable ways to license ebooks consortially while maintaining the institutional subject strengths of our institutions and the robust resource sharing that we've come accustomed to at TRLN because we have the infrastructure in place for many years for sharing print collections. Also, as a part of the summit, we wanted to identify 1 or more vendors who would be willing to negotiate with us to implement the strategies that were developed at the meeting. Rebecca Sager, in her creative problem-solving mode at the end of that meeting, basically said there has to be a better way to work collaboratively. So that's how the pilot was born. So the goal of the pilot was to create a financially sustainable model for consortial acquisition of ebooks with parallel acquisition of print copies as needed. So through this program, TRLN acquires nearly the entire monographic output of OUP UPSO content as ebooks or print. In preparing for this presentation, I was going back through some of the foundational documents from the Beyond Print Summit, which I was not with TRLN at the time, so it predates me, but reading through some, you can just feel the excitement about doing this kind of thing at the time. Some quotes: the program is undertaken in the spirit of learning and discovery. We will allow for flexible experimentation and will adjust our approach as needed. So with the ebooks, all 4 institutions share them. All 4 institutions have equal access to them. The shared print books are housed at a central storage facility that's sort of in between those 4 institutions that I just mentioned. So it's not, they're not held on any one of the campuses, but they're accessible by all. So what we've learned, probably the most important thing, if any piece of data that's the most important, is the comparison of print books that were purchased in 2011 compared to print books that were purchased in 2017. So in 2011, before this program actually started, TRLN members had purchased 8,551 print copies of Oxford titles. In 2017, that's the third bullet, the total print copies was down to 5,511. So that's basically a 35% drop in print acquisitions. Meanwhile, as our print was decreasing, E was increasing. So over the life of this program, since the beginning, we've added about 2,000 ebooks per year, and we're up to, now we have perpetual permanent access to almost 15,000 ebooks, and that's growing every year. Some of the titles we know we're going to get in print. Any of our faculty publications, we definitely will get in print as shared print copies, and then also each of the institution of one of their faculty members, if it's their publication, they will probably get a local copy of that as well. So we're growing E collections, decreasing print collections, and significantly reducing the duplication of E and P. We've also realized that the shared print is actually being used. So the usage is hovering at about 4,000 checkouts per year of the print titles. And I have the exact numbers if anyone is interested in the exact numbers. The lessons of this program are ongoing. I guess I would say the management and oversight of the content. The first couple years, that was a lot of work, I will say mostly on the part of Luke Swindler, but his counterparts also at NC State and Duke and NC Central, looking at what do we want in print and what can we have in E. We basically did that by Library of Congress subject headings and classification, and that work has decreased over the last few years. I think we've pretty much reached a steady state on that. I would say the management oversight of administrative data has also evolved. We've created a pretty simple tool now, but it took a long time. It's just a Google worksheet that shows each year, what do we have in print, how much have we paid, what do we have in E, and that helps us see those trends over time. But with the involvement of TRLN as the consortium, and the 4 members, and OUP, and YBP, who kind of manage the print aspect of this. There are lots of people bringing lots of data in lots of different formats to this, to the point that it was like, how many books do we have? So we now have, I think we've gotten that to the point that it's pretty clear it's a centralized place that everyone can access. Another really important part of this program is that we now have much more access to academic scholarship than we had before. And that really is the essence of what we do as academic libraries and as a consortium and as academic presses. I think all 4 of our institutions have different collecting priorities, they have different budgets, they have different cultures, so they're all benefiting in different ways. I would say for North Carolina Central in particular, the HBCU, their collections budget is far lower than the others, so they especially are benefiting from this vast amount of scholarly research and publications that they really otherwise would not have had. I think the other key part of this program that we're still learning is just the importance of the collaboration and partnership. Especially these two who have worked together for a long time. I think that really this program has been really flexible. It's not like a big deal that we locked into 5 years ago and have been locked into ever since. Really every year we, Jennifer, Rebecca, Luke, Luke's counterpart, we look at the program, we talk about it, we see what's working, we tweak it, we adjust it. Overall, it's been revenue neutral. We've just kind of shifted where we're spending our money. And we're getting, as I said, more E, less P, spending the same amount of money, getting more content. And while we have the data, there's the science behind that, it's really been that just like talking, once a year, checking in, see what's working, and how do we want to tweak the E and P and the pricing structure to make sure that they're, it's sort of a big project on getting to yes, and we've done that, and so far it's worked well, and I would say it's functioning. The first couple years it was a lot of tweaking and adjusting. The last couple years it's been a little less work, really, with greater benefit. So I will now turn it over to Luke, who will talk about the program from an institutional perspective.
great. Let's see if I got the technology correct. So my first set of slides will all begin with Ken. It is to reassure you that you can do this. The fact that I'm still standing here as an employee of UNC Chapel Hill Libraries shows I'm not whistling Dixie, but we've done it, and I retain my job. So, this kind of project program can be low risk. And it needs, but you need to be able to take a risk, because the nature of risk is danger and opportunity. So if you feel libraries need to change, you need to take risk. And the more you want to change, the more you want to win, the bigger the risk. It can be affordable, but there's a dynamic behind it that explains how it can be affordable, even though you're buying more and more books. And it can be acceptable to users. And this is one of the things I will talk about in the next slide, why it can be acceptable. And it can even be with core presses and even in non-STEM fields such as the humanities and social sciences. The only areas that it doesn't work in is where ebooks don't work, which is the art and photography classes. Because yes, we can have OUP ebooks with all those images, but instead of paying $150, you pay $1,000, and that's not going to work. So it works in all subjects. So the key thing that we began with, we weren't out to cut our expenditures, and OUP was not out to increase its revenues. But we both realized that our ebook expenditures would expand. The presses are releasing more monographs as ebooks. We add more presses, We don't need a higher degree in mathematics to figure out the expenditures are going to increase. And the way we mesh the two is we systematically reduce the scope of shared print. And we do it in a way that is very calculated, it represents a bounded risk, and it means the program will be accepted for users. And you need to know what vendors have to do, and when they can play a role, and when they can't play a role. So, we were very clear about this, that UNC was out to change user expectations, and you change expectations, you change behavior. And the way you do this is you don't suddenly go to all E. You realize that some high visibility books that are often high use books need to be retained as print. So we buy print locally for all UNC Chapel Hill faculty. We buy all print for the dozen-plus major media sources like TRLN, New York Times, they build monitors for us, and everything mentioned in PR. It costs $60K. I've done my math correctly. It's 0.4% of our budget. You know, it doesn't cost you anything. We're going to buy it anyway, whether or not we have this program. And then you give them a security blanket. You know, if we had waited for even STEM fields like math, for the mathematicians to say it's okay to move to print, we'd be waiting for this for time. It won't be on the range. Mathematicians talk about working with pencil and paper. They weren't ready to go. And so you want to duplicate an ebook with print? Fine. It's yes or yes. When we converted our Springer books for print to electronic 15 years ago, we had the mathematicians and the geologists really concerned what was going to happen. We told them we would just duplicate without demand. After 6 years, the math physics librarian and I calculated we didn't look at the duplicated in 20 months. It costs nothing to give them the security blanket to it. And then you want to offer incentives, and we learned this again with Springer, whereby you have the Springer output for the same amount of money, you get 100% as ebooks. And we learned how to do this with OUP and its partner presses. The goal was to assure that we're going to get everything. We'll get it in print, we'll get it in E, and get it in both when appropriate. And then you do a logical transition. So our shared print collection has been shrinking to afford the ebooks. So we started by saying we would only exclude STEM fields. Then, that worked. Then we said we would exclude non-STEM fields that act like STEM fields, such as psychology and economics. Then we excluded professional fields, education, business. Then we excluded duplicating the two humanities fields with a point of the realm story of the book that we want, linguistics, philosophy, not a peak. Then we just made a across the board distinct decision that regardless of subject, an article is an article. So books that were not traditional long form monographs, but secondary article chapters, or otherwise chunkable that is consulted rather than we just went ahead and stopped doing shared print. You know, we calculated the retreat from print very deliberately. We had no protest. We have never had in any of these conversions, either with the TRLN or any of our other processes that we convert to ebooks, we have never had to go back and decide. And we used what we learned with the TRL and OUP to make other choices. So we converted subsequently a major social science press, Sage, to default to ebooks. And then we decided to convert Cambridge University Press books to ebooks with their shared print. I was too and then one of the ways we changed behavior is not only giving them the security blanket that we buy any print book they want, but we decided to obliterate geography. Most off-site storage facilities are stepchildren. Well, it takes 2 days to get a book from the main library to anyone on campus, 2 different days. It takes 2 days to get a book from the off-site storage facility on campus. Geography no longer counts. And users have become so accustomed to document delivery now, which is fairly rapid, that I asked our circulation department to tell me which building counted for the largest number of document delivery requests for books. And it was the building separated from the main library by a driveway that housed history, political science, and sociology. You know, why come to the library? Why cross the driveway to come to the library when we can deliver a book? There are very few bibliographical emergencies in the real world. They can wait a and you know, we were able to do what we needed to do. And once you change expectations, you change behavior, you change the nature of the collections. And as one aspect of this larger shift, the print books added to the main library at UNC, English is now only 55%. It will probably decline to less than half. And once we have a main library collection composed of foreign language books mostly, which are generally movies and not movies, then you're in a position to liberate space, put more books in the off-site storage facility, and become a different kind of library where we leverage our space for high value. And I believe that is my last slide.
All right, thank you, Luke. So the publisher perspective and what we've learned in the past 5 to 6 years. This is how kind of we felt about it back in 2012, 2013, taking a leap into the unknown. So back at that time, we felt it was time to take a risk. It was time to look and see how could we do this differently. That Beyond Print Summit was really, you know, as I was sitting in that room, just listening to the data that the libraries were presenting about overlap and how much duplication was happening. So, you know, Lisa pointed out that they acquired about 8,000 some odd books in the year 2011. How many, some of those had 4 or 5 copies of the same book, and there were so many gaps in what they weren't buying. So you look at that 8,800 number now and the 5,000 copies now, but it probably represents a much more diverse collection. And they're able to acquire much more by not duplicating their spend on the same content that's available in one format sitting on a shelf somewhere, that they're able to open the contents up across a wide range. So it was really, at that point, it was just like, God, there's got to be a better way, as Lisa shared. And you know, at that point in time, the monograph was under significant pressure. Obviously, it still is, with escalating cereals prices taking up a larger share of the budget, usage-based models. We're talking about monographs. Monographs are not heavy use items. So that at that same time is like, how do we stay able to produce this kind of content in that environment? And is there, ways in which we can work together? And we were looking for ways to be in line with our mission, which is to broaden access to a wider range of content. That's financially feasible for all parties involved, not just OUP, but the library and our author community, to make sure that they're continuing to be supported. And make sure that we come up with a sustainable way to publish this kind of content. And I know, as I mentioned, and some of you have been in talks I've given before, but OUP and other university presses are not publishing monographs to make a profit. We're not. They're published because they're important for scholarship and literature in the field. And if there was a way collectively libraries could harness what they're independently doing, and you might say inefficiently doing, to meet the needs of the user, whether it's print or online, and the funds could be used better to broaden the access and discoverability for this important mode of scholarly communications. And the answer, after 5 years of this experiment, I think, is emphatically yes, there is a better way. So let's talk about the reality of OUP monograph publishing. So here's a picture of OUP sales. Not all of our sales, but really those in the library market through a particular vendor that I won't mention. But not surprisingly, it's not a great picture for print sales over the last 5 or 6 years. The truth is these books are not published for that wide audience and not for heavy use. So finding the sustainable models is essential for us to be able to continue to produce high quality content. Now, the average monograph today now sells between 200 and 500 copies worldwide in its lifetime. You don't make money on that. But that's about half of what it was a decade ago. So there's been quite a massive shift in what happens in this kind of publishing. And the vast majority of those sales come in the first 3 years of life, and that's really what supports this kind of these types of scholarly communication. And when you move to usage-based models, where books might not be used for 5 years or bought for 5 years, it's a real challenging environment for our kind of publishing. So entering into agreement with a place like TRLN, which would help give sustainable annual revenue to us, more predictable, across a range of content, then they benefit from the broader access. And whether or not they would be satisfied with it was a crucial part, an experiment that we needed to undertake. Could we both survive in this environment? So just kind of summarizing a few of the lessons learned over this time, a sustainable long-term program is possible. I think we've found an agreement that provides value to both of us, and that allows for the monograph to survive and print to survive where it's needed. Being flexible, I know Lisa talked about that, having a model that acknowledges the library's continued or not need for print has been successful. We've tweaked it every year as the needs change. We're able to sort of move the needle kind of up and down in ways that worked for both of us. Stability and predictability are achieved for us. We have a good relationship. As you can tell, the usage is there. We understand each other, and we can predict how we're doing. And that's important when you have a small number of books that you sell each year. Results have helped us to achieve the OUP mission, which I talked about this before. It sounds kind of corny or I say cult-like. But our mission to create world-class academic and educational resources and make them available as widely as possible is achieved by having these types of agreements. You think about NC Central having access to all of the new content that OUP produces in a way they could never have before. It's absolutely what we should be doing. And the model is extensible, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Based on our experience with TRLN, we were able to have conversations with lots of other different consortium groups, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And the next challenge, it's not without its challenges still. The one area that's missing, the gap in what we're providing to TRLN electronically is course adoption and trade materials, and trying to find a model with that kind of publishing so that it can be completely comprehensive and make things available for institutional use in a way that works for all of us. That'll be the next area to tackle in the next year or so, I suspect. And when we talked about the extensible model, we're now working with all of these different consortial groups in all different ways. there's not one right way for us to make this kind of model work. But the collaborative approach to building collections with these types of ebooks has found utility across a wide range of different types of organizations, both large like Orbis Cascade and the Colorado Alliance, to smaller groups such as SUNY research centers and Central Iowa, a small group of institutions. So we're really pleased with the way it's gone. Again, it provides us with predictability and stability and provides a much greater access to our content. And it has really delivered on that. So with that, I think I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Any questions from the room? Or the number here? I answered all of your questions. Yes.
Can you say more about what you're hoping to do with course adoption and training materials?
So we are for us it's not an easy topic to kind of find a way to do it sustainably. When you think about a monograph and opening it up for course use, that's just a benefit. But when we're a publisher who sells 100 copies of a book on a campus per semester, how do we find a way to make it available for institutional use? I don't know that I'm not sure yet. I think we're going to be looking at experimenting in some ways to make it available. Yeah. Sorry, not to be more definitive.
What do you mean by trade material?
Sorry, I should have clarified that. Trade materials are like the popular nonfiction books that we sell in bookstores, and they're also frequently used for course adoption. So books that we publish that are Pulitzer Prize winners like Freedom from Fear and Donald Prize Freedom that sell, were published 2 decades ago and still sell something like 20,000 copies a year and get used in a lot of history courses, things like that.
TRLN would be an interesting limited risk to
Yeah.
try that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 kinds of what we call course adoption books. There's the ones we're publishing now that we think might be course adoption books that editors and people at our organization are saying don't put in because if you put it in, they're never going to have any course adoption sales. That's one problem. Figure out how to do that for the moving forward titles. But then there's the group of titles we've kept out over the last decade or so that have become course adoption books and are successfully course adoption books. And that's kind of a different problem that we want to try to solve as well.
I think Luke addressed this. I want to make sure I understood how you're addressing ebook inflation, which has really increased, print monographs pretty much went flat in terms of inflation, increasing prices there. You're essentially buying fewer print books to address the
growing number of ebooks. And it's not so much the price of ebooks that is increasing, because those of you who attended the Gobi Library Publisher session earlier this week, what Gobi captures is what goes through Gobi. What Gobi is not capturing is all the ebooks acquired directly between libraries and publishers. And those are bought at a very different price. If those were factored in, the price increases in the chart that you saw that Michael Zioli presented would not be that great. And then we are a beneficiary of buying everything at a very affordable price.
it's really about list growth versus, or acquisition growth versus price increases. That's just what it's.
So, what are you really asking, Doug?
I think I will say, Doug, in looking at, in reviewing their expenditures over the past couple of years, their list price per book has not grown.
That's what I was
Yeah.
asking.
Right, we do monitor that.
Yeah.
All right.
And share the data. The other thing I'd like to say is this began with sharing and trust. I can remember the first meeting we had, it was Rebecca and me and some other people, and I said, oh, well, I'll just tell you what we're spending on OUP books. And the response was, we never know what individual libraries spend. And after the meeting, I then had an acquisition said, we never revealed this data to each other now. And so you have to establish this kind of trust. And I think that you expose the financials. And that's good for everyone because you need to understand the mechanisms.
Yeah, that actually fed a lot into how we came to the price point that we did. It's less about buying a book at a certain price than it is about the package. We have years where we publish a few more, we publish a few less, and it becomes less about the price of the individual book as much as the value that they're getting altogether. And it will change year to year. There's gonna be years where they get more, and years where they get less, and you're less concerned about that because you know that we're committed to it, that it's going to happen that way, and we acknowledge that up front. Unless we're doing something where we're expanding into a wide range of other content, this works. And it's been predictable.
And one of our shared key goal was to move both the libraries and OUP from a totally print world to an overwhelmingly e-world, and we're trying to push it as far as it makes academic and instruction sense.
I will say, I did, as I mentioned, join the program a little later, and at the beginning it was called a pilot, and some people said, what is the question we're trying to answer? Like, what are we evaluating as part of this pilot? And I don't know that that was ever clearly articulated. I think it was more as
A way to try it.
just like, let's try
You
something.
put the word pilot on anything, you can try it. That's my secret.
I think if we were to do this again, we would sort of start from the beginning and ask, what are we trying to learn and what data do we need to answer those questions? Because even that finally pulling together, as I mentioned, since so many people had different pieces of information, you know, YVP Gobi had some, OUP had some, like just having a place where we could see how many books are we getting, how much are we paying for those, because it was coming from different places, and that has not really been, an automated process, that has been manual, taking the Gobi data, taking the OUP data, taking our circulation data, and just like manually putting it in there. I'm sure there's an automated way somebody could figure out how to do that, but we have not focused on that piece yet. Yes.
How does the ebook purchasing and sharing situation work? Like, because there's 4 of y'all, so are you like buying 3 copies, like, and you get a discount, or how does that work?
We each have individual ownership of all the books. So if ever this breaks up, which we do not anticipate by any stretch of the imagination, UNC has its e-books, Duke has its e-books, Central has its e-books, it's all shares.
And I think within the consortium, you decide how to share the cost for it.
Right.
Correct?
So
Right.
yeah, you're getting one big invoice that's from y'all, and then y'all
And
figure
we
it out.
share
How
all
big
the
you-
ways.
Yeah.
We determine the benefits, and so quite frankly, we were out to increase, both OUP and TRLN out to increase the number of books available historically. Black University that had very little, and so they pay a concession price. But they're still probably paying a little bit more than they would have paid OUP, but it doesn't really matter because the benefits are greater for some participants, and those participants pay a larger share. And we feel it is equitable individually, and it makes sense collectively to OUP because you always know you're going to get paid.
Yeah. We have the easy part. They have the hard part of figuring out what is a fair way to distribute that. And they work closely with Gobi and can decide, how to budget that out and what cost centers it goes to, and that's been really helpful. Gobi's been, they're not on our panel right now, we probably should have had them on here, but they did a lot of work, especially in the beginning, trying to figure out how to catalog a shared print copy, and how does it not look to UNC that Duke owns everything, and just making it, okay, Emory was a vital part of that initial stage. There was a lot of bumps in the road in that. TRLN has paved the way for it to be a lot simpler for everyone else. We did a lot of learning through doing with them.
And when I just went to a session that John Vickery from NC State gave on some of their, analyzing usage of ebook packages, and I was thinking we need to do more of that with this program. And John Vickery at NC State a few years ago, when I was asking him about trying to learn about this program, and he said, What we should have done with this program is not have any print in it at all. It should have just been an ebook program, but we weren't ready for that. I mean, I think he said that coming from an assessment perspective, it would have been much easier if we just said these are the ebooks. But 7 years ago, we couldn't just say we're gonna get all of these things in e-only.
Yeah, and it's, from a publisher perspective, it's really hard for publishers like ourselves to discount print and to provide discounted print copies. For us, it's easier to negotiate the digital price. But trying to factor in the fact that libraries don't have budgets for both formats, they want them, but don't have budgets for them. How do we come up with a price for digital that acknowledges where they are still buying print? And so in the way we priced it, they pay less for digital in the areas in which they're still acquiring print. Because we know they're investing in that content already. And as that shifts, as they buy less print, they'll pay more for digital. But that was an agreement that we had from the very beginning, that there's, that's how it will happen. If you're still investing in the print, you're gonna save on the digital.
And I might say that the trust that TRLN and OUP build, it's also, this program works because the trust of all the members of the TRLN consortium. We know each other's metrics every which way. We're not out to get an advantage. There is no perfect formula for how we will decide on what is the optimal division cost. We have a division that we are comfortable with. And going back to John Vickery's comment, when I talk about risk, the collecting service division of the 600 libraries, it's not just risk, it is calculated and bounded risk, people.
And that's what works for TRLN, and it doesn't necessarily work for other consortia. It's a very individualized approach to that, that area. Sure. Any more questions? We're almost out of time. That might be it. Well, thank you so much.